Hello, hello, hello. Lana Love here. Here is the last part of the Jesus and Mary love story. Here we go. Chapter 28, Transcending the Physical World. And also, as a reminder, I'm sharing my love story, and you can find it at LanaLoveUBU.substack.com. Go there and subscribe. If you want to have access, it might still be private. I'm not sure. I go back and forth between making that site private and public. All right, Transcending the Physical World. Chapter 28. If you have missed the previous videos where I have been reading the love story of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, there are 7 more videos before this last one. Here we go. Chapter 28 from the book Love and a Map to the Unaltered Soul, channeled through Tina Louise Spalding. And here is the back of the book. I highly recommend you go buy this book, get your own copy, read it. Lots of wisdom in this, as well as Jesus and Mary's story from Mary Magdalene's perspective. Now, to find Jesus's perspective, which I did read in one of the previous 7 videos, that was taken out of this book, Jesus, My Autobiography. Same channeler, Tina Louise Spalding. So yeah, check out the books. They're so good. They're so good. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, I have another one here. Making Love to God, The Path to Divine Sex. Again, Tina Louise Spalding. And Great Minds Speak to You. Yes, I just created a video with Amy Winehouse's message. Check that out. Go look for that on my channel. I think you'll love it. I love it because she was a singer-songwriter who went through a lot of pain and suffering in her lifetime because she was a celebrity, because of the energies that were directed at her from so-called fans. Anyway, great message from her that's in that video. Go check it out. It's the one I'm uploading just before this one. So here we go with the rest of the story, the love story of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Transcending the Physical World. Jesus worked as a healer and a teacher and traveled to various towns every other week or so to do intensive on-the-ground teaching. His channeled information from non-physical beings was very intense at that time, and he was literally fed information the week before he was to teach it, and then debriefed after each experience. It was very hard on him to be around so many people, to be swarmed and intimidated. That was the most difficult part for him. That was why I did not go with him. I provided support by staying home so that he could have a place to return to and recover from his excursions. The number of people who wanted him and the number of hours he put in on those journeys were tremendous. He slept and ate little. When he spent time with me, he used it for recuperation because he was exhausted after 7 or 10 days of ministering. Traveling was tiring in those days. There was no fast, comfortable, air-conditioned cars. There were no fast, comfortable, air-conditioned cars. I'm real particular about grammar. I knew I wasn't saying it right. Instead, there was a lot of walking, physical exertion. Violence erupted around his teaching. The Romans were intimidated when they realized he brought joy and hope to the minds and hearts of those he spoke with. And the Jewish hierarchies were very upset. Oh no, he brought joy and hope. They had a stranglehold on the population, and Jesus pried their fingers off the people's throats as they struggled for air. He was that breath of fresh air, a bringer of truth and love and optimism for those who felt oppressed by the many levels of government. He was warned and attacked time and again by various groups of beings who did not want him to do what he did, which is why he had 12 disciples to care for and provide for him. They were a somewhat intimidating group who could protect him. That is not covered in your Bible. but it was very much a part of the rationale of having that many men around him. It kept him safe and brought him home to me. At that time, our relationship was deeply challenged by the teachings. We had young children, and he missed them terribly, but his guidance from the non-physical showed him the way. We talked about the fact that his time on earth was limited, which was not an easy thing for me. During the 2 years or so that we knew this would transpire, we worked through emotions. His teachers spoke through him, to me, much as this being's teachers speaks through her, to you. And they explained that his time on earth was necessarily short, that this was the arrangement. They said he would understand what was going on as we traveled through our incarnation. They said he had been designated as a bringer of light to do this, but it was not a long-term shift, so to speak. It was a short shift. I was told that I would be cared for and that the transformation and transfiguration he would go through would seem to be very difficult, but the life I would lead as a result of this experience would be perfectly happy. It was difficult for me to understand this, and it was very, very hard for Jesus to accept it as well, despite his enlightenment. He loved me and our children, and he loved his life as it was, but as time passed, it became clear that he was drastically changing from an ordinary physical being, human being, into something else. He was much less concerned with worldly things and spent more and more time in meditation and communing with higher realms. And I could see that he was no longer attached to the world in the way that ordinary consciousness is. He was no longer attached to the body in the way that ordinary consciousness is. And he began to experiment with transforming it. He experimented with leaving his body for long periods. I would find him meditating, and he would be gone for hours. He was simply not there. So there was some of the preparation. So these were some of the preparations that took place. So to and through him, as we approach that time, you call the crucifixion. Fulfilling the agreement. This is where the story really diverts from your understanding of events. He went to the crucifixion completely knowledgeable and intentionally teaching. He spent a lot of time with the children and me in those last few months. That is not documented in your mythology, but that is what happened. As the date approached, he knew it was coming. It was his decision, not something that was forced on him. There were circumstances set up by Spirit to make it appear that it happened to him, but he knew, and he had known since his enlightenment, that this was going to transpire. Part of his teaching was to show that the body is not of value. It is repeatable, if you will, for it can be made anew. He taught that the physical realm is a low realm, and there were many others above it. This gave people an incentive to study and practice his teachings so that they could learn that they were heading toward a wonderful, wonderful experience. As he went to his crucifixion, fully knowledgeable, aware, and accepting of what would happen, he knew he would not suffer. He knew he could remove his consciousness from his body, and that the play that looked very vicious, violent, and murderous was merely that. It was a play, and he was not in it. He was above it. The day of his crucifixion was, however, one of the worst days of my life, because I saw somebody I loved go through what looked like devastating torture. I was with Jesus on the walk and at the crucifixion, and as I looked into his eyes, I could see he knew and that he was fine. He was there and not there. He was okay, but it was impossible for me to remain calm. My ordinary consciousness, remember, I wasn't enlightened at this point, could not tolerate what his captors did to him. As the day passed, it was clear he had left his physical structure. It was merely surviving on what you call a lower level of consciousness, a vegetative state. It functioned just as your structure does when you are asleep. It breathes and digests. That too was happening to him at the end, among other functions. But he had gone. The higher levels of his consciousness had moved on, and I was prepared for the next stage of the game, so to speak. He had told me that we would meet again shortly after this experience, and that I was to be the first to see him. This is where you can go to your Bible and get some sense that I was significant in his life. But your Bible does not offer anything truthful, really, about his ministry, because it had an agenda. The people who wrote it had an agenda, and they wanted to make him something that he was not. He was a being who studied frequency, elevation, and spiritual practices that were given to him by non-physical teachers. He studied with physical teachers and incorporated those practices into his. He unceasingly aligned himself with love, and in that alignment, he overcame the separated physical world, the material world. That is all he ever wanted to teach people, that they could do it too. And that is the truth. You all can do it. As we put his killed and empty body to rest, I felt a sense of peace. I knew it was part of the teaching. However, this did not go very well with many of the disciples. They were not privy to the same intimate conversations and preparations I'd had with Jesus, so they went into fear and terror. However, a couple of them knew, through their close association with Jesus and me, what was happening and why, and they were able to handle a very challenging time. This is difficult for you to comprehend because of your indoctrinations, but the journey that I went on with Jesus, through his ministry, crucifixion, resurrection, and the rest of my life, were joyful despite the intensity of that week. It was amazing to see an enlightened person go through the ultimate experiment, if you will, of being killed and having the mastery of the physical material world to return completely healthy in a new physical form. That is exactly what happened. We reunited at the designated time, and he was himself. This became the private part of our relationship. It is not written about in your books, in your mythology. Yet after that event, we continued on for many, many years as husband and wife. You must revise your opinion of me and of Jesus to come to an understanding of what you are. We were no different from you. We had our assignments in our incarnations, and you have your assignments in yours. Your incarnational assignments are hidden in your feeling self, in your desires, your passions, and the truth of the peace of your mind. When your mind is at peace and you are in that inner guidance, then you are on the true path to enlightenment. There is no secret here. God has not hidden the answer in some cryptic sacrificial practice. It is in love that you find your way home. It is in love that you express your true nature and reach this place of awakening and eternal life. There is no death as you know it. That is an illusory concept that becomes true when you believe in it, because Jesus did not believe in it anymore. He overcame death. He went through a public demonstration of something that was not survivable, yet his consciousness created a new body. This was the miracle he wanted to teach the disciples. But because they had absolute love and adoration for him, without the intimate knowledge I had of him, they could not tolerate the experience and the teaching. It became distorted, and many of them reverted to their conditioned ways. Remember, they had not had long relationships with him. Some of them had only known him for 3 years, so they were not able to complete their transformation of mind. I completed my transformation of mind during our marriage and those years of the ministry, and I was prepared. I knew what he could do. He had not shown me what he could do. He had shown me what he could do, and even though it was a traumatic thing to witness, it was not the truth of my understanding. So I did not experience it the way you would imagine. As difficult as it was not the end that other people thought it was. Chapter 29, The Magnificent Journey Through God's Heart. As you can imagine, succeeding in that particular epic journey and coming out the other side was the culmination of several years of physical, emotional, and mental preparation. It was a difficult journey. And I went through hell in some ways as I watched that body be brutalized and crucified and killed. It was a demonstration of mastery that was unbelievable to many. And that was the most difficult thing for Jesus. The psychological effects of witnessing that death and then the miracle of the reconstruction of a new body were too much for many of the disciples. They were relatively new in spiritual practice. Despite their time with Jesus, they were young men who had a hard time shifting in consciousness. They had not gone through the decades of practice that several of us had, so they reverted to the mind in which they were more comfortable, which was the traditional Jewish teachings. It brought up for them terrors of demons and possession, much as it would for you in your society. You too have been indoctrinated in beliefs of demons and evil, and this is a great detriment to your frequency. We ask you to look at the aspect of yourself, to look at that aspect of yourself. Do you believe in demons? Do you believe in their ability to affect you or get you or come randomly into your experience? These are beliefs that must be cleansed from the mind through prayer and by focusing on love and higher consciousness so that these unloving, unhealthy beliefs do not sabotage you. Because of such fears, the disciples who chose to leave after the resurrection lost a great opportunity to continue studying with the Master, with my beloved Jesus. After the resurrection, Jesus and I remained in our home area for several weeks, but because of what had transpired, it became impossible for us to stay there. We had children and families, and it was time to end that chapter of our lives. We could not stay in a place where many had witnessed his death. We could not stay with people who grieved his death, even though he was alive and well. They were not able to process the information, and it became clear that there would be a big shift in our life together. In quiet contemplation and conversation, we decided to leave our home. We took our children, yes, and we moved to a different part of the world. Of course, we didn't view it that way then, but we knew we would go on a journey across the water to another land. That is what we decided to do. If the disciples could not handle the truth of Jesus' resurrection, then surely neither could ordinary people. So we decided as a team, as an equal couple, that our public work was done. Our public life was over, and we would live out our lives in the way we wanted to, which was in quiet contemplation in a rural, gentle, and less troubled place. Together we recruited the 2 disciples who had been able to work with and manage the energies and transformation that Jesus had gone through, and we sailed to the region you call the south of France, where we sought out a place to live. It was a different life for me. It was a difficult time, but I was with the beings I loved with all my heart and soul. It was hard to leave my home, but it had changed. It was not a place where I could reside in peace, and it was not a place where I wanted to raise my children. I wanted to raise my children in a peaceful, calm, and loving environment that would benefit them. I did not feel that the fractious and oppressive, and at times combative and aggressive, place would be the best, so I made the difficult decision to leave one part of my life and begin another. You must understand that we made that journey together. I was not abandoned in any way, shape, or form, so I was not afraid. I knew I had a powerful spiritual teacher as my partner. I had a powerful spiritual teacher as my guide, as my husband, and as the father of my children, so I was in safekeeping. Spirit had said I would not have to suffer very long. And in fact, the suffering I experienced in my life was very short-lived. The suffering I experienced was only during the crucifixion and subsequent times of separation, which came from within my own mind. Those challenges taught me something about how to discipline my mind and how to focus on what I wanted, the outcome I wanted more of. We took our very challenging life lessons and moved to a place where we could live in peace and harmony as a relatively anonymous couple. Jesus, of course, was not the kind of person who disappeared in a crowd. He made himself known in that environment and began to teach once again, but he was changed. He had gone through a massive shift in consciousness, as his enlightenment required. And after the resurrection, there was another shift in him that was irrevocable. It was not negative, but I guess it caused me to lose some connection with him. He needed to be with spirit more and more. He needed to separate from the physical world more and more. He no longer needed it. It was meaningless to him. The games, the words, and the choices that people made were not his, and he did not really identify with them anymore. Even his connection with his children was affected. It was not that he did not love or care about them, but he was no longer bound by the physical material world. And he spent a lot of time in other places in meditation. He would meditate for days at a time and then would return into his body and consciousness to participate in life. He journeyed far and wide in those years, and as we matured and came into our middle years, of course, he did not age. He was not subject to the laws of physics as I still was at that time. We became more like brother and sister. This is not something for those of you who are romantics to be sad about. Do not see this as the ultimate testimony to the unfairness of the world. That is not so. That is not so. We loved each other purely in spirit. We had experienced our passionate younger years, had our children, and endured the tumult and the disruption of his public ministry. We were happy to live the way we were living. I had not had a normal life, and we had not had an ordinary life together. We hadn't asked for normal, and we want you to not ask for normal either. You have been taught to live limited lives, just as I was when I was a young woman. I was taught to be subservient, and when I was a young woman, I was taught to be subservient, and I was taught that women were not valued as highly as men. I grew beyond that, with my beloved teaching me and helping to heal my mind and bring it into balance. Honoring myself as well as him was a most magnificent journey, but I had to be prepared to be abnormal and not look like everybody else, and I was willing to do that to have the experience I had. Wow, that's the experience I'm having in my life. I was in a place you call the south of France for a long time, from my early 30s until I passed into the non-physical, and during that time, Jesus taught in that area. I taught there too, and there were followers, beings who listened and took these teachings to heart. There is a culture based on those teachings that grew up in that area, and it is a valid organization and interpretation, albeit not particularly accurate on what transpired. Oh my gosh, I'm just now realizing that in one of my past lives, I lived in France. And I was a Jewish woman who ended up getting captured by the Germans and eventually raped and killed for singing. Wow, I'm just putting that together that I was in France because I keep seeing the Eiffel Tower and things like that as messages, and I forgot that they lived in the south of France. So perhaps I was a part of this organization. I'm getting a gut tug. The teachings came to that part of the world and spread over the centuries to other areas. They were not accepted. They were always considered rebellious because they do not support the hierarchical structures of the organized church, and they never have and never will. They are freedom-seeking, love-based teachings, and they ask you to listen to your inner guidance as the authority you follow from birth to death. That's what I'm doing, finally now. If you practice what we teach through these texts and A Course in Miracles, which I'm also starting to read and teach, you can find that on my Psychic Songbird Tarot channel, on YouTube and on Substack. And it might not be called that now by the time you're hearing this or reading this or seeing this. So my creations are definitely evolving and changing as I receive more information. So please check it out. See if you can find it. At this time, I'm posting on Psychic Songbird on YouTube and also on Substack. If you practice what we teach through these texts and A Course in Miracles, you will, in the end, avoid the death you fear so much. It is an illusory concept that is only active in your life if you believe in it. Add love to everything. As you mature, evolve, and grow, relinquishing judgment, separation, and fear, and choosing love day after day, hour after hour, and moment after moment, you will align with frequencies that do not require you to die in the way you believe you have to. It is a time-consuming activity, and it requires dedication and practice, but we want you to know that the life you lead without these ideas and thoughts of forgiveness and love is not worth living. You live in separation and the fear of death and poverty, and in fact, you bring these things to you because you believe in them. As you believe more and more in spirit, in the divine, and in love, and you practice it, not only in your actions and your words, but in your thoughts and in your feelings, you will manifest things in your world that you could not manifest before. This is the path to peace and happiness. And as I came to the end of my life, Jesus met me and took me into his arms, and we walked together into that non-physical world that you call the afterlife. It is not afterlife. It is life, 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 life. You never die. You are an eternal spiritual being, and you are completely in alignment with love all the time. Any suffering you experience is your mind dipping into fear or shame or jealousy or anger or scarcity, and it is not the reality of who you are. Love is real. Love is the answer to all the problems on your planet at this time. It is the answer to all the problems you have in your world, your life, your body, and your relationships. Add love to everything. It is how Jesus and I got through that most magnificent incarnation together. I have no regrets. I experienced something that very few people have experienced. But as your planet evolves and more of you align with love, more of you will have these kinds of experiences. Yes, Lana Love here. I know I'm one of them. Yes, yes, yes. Gut tug. We want you to know that you have the ability to align with love, and that is all Jesus and I did. We aligned ourselves with love, and we reaped the rewards of that most magnificent crop. You always reap what you sow, so pay attention to your thoughts, your feelings, and these lessons. They are impeccable and invaluable, and they will take you on a journey into the heart of God. Nothing else will do for you. I am the one you know as Mary Magdalene, and I will share teachings in the next few years with my beloved Jesus. These are important times, and you must focus your hearts and minds on what you want and what makes you happy, and that is love. It is always love. Wow, what a beautiful story. What a beautiful story. Thank you so much for listening. And again, go check out Tina Louise Spalding. She channeled these amazing books. They are so incredible. I have my own copies. You really need to go get your own. I think she has 8 or 9 of them now. And don't forget to join me for A Course in Miracles. I'm reading the text out of this book as well as doing the lessons on my YouTube channel, on my Substack account. Please join me for more beautiful teachings from Jesus and Mary and the Ascended Masters and the Archangels and all of those beautiful beings who are here to teach us about love. And if you want to learn about my personal love journey, please subscribe at LanaLoveUBU.substack.com. Check it out. I look forward to seeing you. Thank you so much for joining me. Signing off until next time. You be you and live your dreams now.